Mr. Nduka sat behind his mahogany desk in the grand study of his mansion, the walls lined with awards, certificates, and photographs of his achievements. He was a successful entrepreneur in his early 40s, with a wife and 2 children. Life was good, or so it seemed. Irati, his beautiful wife, was the envy of many. With her sleek figure, flawless skin, and long, flowing hair, she embodied the perfect trophy wife. They had been married for 10 years, since their early 20s, and their union was the epitome of love and success, at least on the surface. Irati had grown up in a wealthy family, accustomed to the finer things in life, but Mr. Nduka had been more than willing to provide them. He built a business empire, a sprawling mansion, and a life of luxury for her and their 2 children. But recently, Mr. Nduka had begun to notice subtle changes in Irati. Her laughter seemed forced, her smiles less genuine. The bond they had once shared appeared to be fraying at the edges. He had chalked it up to the pressures of maintaining their affluent lifestyle, endless social events, financial demands, and the responsibilities of parenting. Yet, something felt off. One evening, as he sat alone in the study, going through some paperwork, he heard a low murmur coming from the living room. It was late, and he was startled to find the lights still on. Curiosity got the better of him, and he stepped out to investigate. "What are you going to do with him, Mama Tino?" Irati's voice floated to him, tinged with something he couldn't quite place, fear, maybe, or something darker. "Just be patient, my dear. It's all about timing. He has to disappear, for good." Mama Tino's voice was cold, almost clinical. Mr. Nduka's blood ran cold. He stood frozen, listening to the conversation, unable to comprehend what he was hearing. Irati and her mother, plotting to get rid of him? It seemed impossible. His wife, the woman he loved, was talking about killing him? But if he finds out, Irati's voice trembled. Mama Tino laughed softly. "He won't. We'll make sure of it. A little accident, a little misfortune. And then everything will be ours. No one will ever suspect." Mr. Nduka's heart thundered in his chest. His wife, the woman he had trusted with his life, was conspiring against him. He felt sick, betrayed, unable to believe that his life had been a lie. He stood there, hidden in the shadows, his mind reeling with the implications. Mr. Nduka sat in his luxurious study, the weight of his wealth and the burden of his marriage pressing heavily on his shoulders. Irati, his beautiful but calculating wife, had always been a mysterious figure. They had married young, and he had been blind to her desires. She was the daughter of a prominent businessman, accustomed to wealth and privilege, but her eyes seemed to gleam with an insatiable hunger for more, a hunger for his wealth. Irati's desires grew more apparent after they moved into Mr. Nduka's grand mansion. She and her mother, Mama Tino, seemed to have a symbiotic relationship, their greedy plans forming a dark undercurrent in the home. Irati, though sweet and affectionate on the outside, had become increasingly cold and distant. Mama Tino, with her haughty demeanor and longing glances at Mr. Nduka's assets, was a constant shadow at their dinner table, always plotting for more. Mr. Nduka had once been proud of his success, a successful entrepreneur in his early 40s, a man who had built his wealth from scratch. He owned multiple businesses, luxury cars, and a sprawling estate. But Irati's desires were insatiable, and he had begun to notice subtle signs: Mama Tino's demands, Irati's increasing reliance on expensive jewelry and clothes, and their hints at moving abroad. He had dismissed his suspicions for a long time, attributing them to the pressures of maintaining appearances in their affluent circles. But recently, he had heard Irati and Mama Tino talking in hushed tones about a plan, an ominous plot to get rid of him, to kill him, and take over his wealth. The thought was almost laughable, but the way they spoke, the venom in Mama Tino's voice and the calculating gleam in Irati's eyes, left no room for doubt. Good day, sir. Sir, please don't be angry, I have something to tell you, Andazi, the housemaid, said quietly, startling Mr. Nduka from his thoughts. Andazi, a timid, hard-working girl, had been with the Nduka family for years. She had seen the dark side of Ireti and Mama Tino more clearly than anyone else. I didn't mean to eavesdrop, but they didn't even care. I heard Madam and Big Mummy talking about you while I was cleaning the store. They were talking about how you were going to die, sir. They said you'd have an accident, and then Big Mummy would move in with Madam and take all your money. They think you're worth more dead than alive, sir. Ngazi's voice quivered as she spoke, her eyes wide with fear. Mr. Nduka's heart sank. Ireti, his once loving wife, was willing to go to such lengths for his wealth? He couldn't believe it. But Ngazi's revelation confirmed his worst fears. What else did you hear, Andazi? He asked, his voice cold, his mind racing with plans. Andazi's eyes flickered with fear, but she squared her shoulders and spoke up. They didn't even care about you, sir. They just want your money. They said they would do anything to get rid of you. I had to tell you, sir. My heart won't have peace if I don't tell you, sir. Please, you are a good man. Don't let them get away with it. Mr. Nduka felt a cold fury rising inside him. How could he have been so blind? He took a deep breath, trying to control his anger. Thank you, Andazi. Thank you for telling me this. But we have to be careful. We can't let them know we're onto them. Not yet. Mr. Nduka spent the next few days in a state of controlled chaos. He couldn't sleep, barely ate, his mind constantly racing with the details of his plan. Every whisper he'd heard between Ireti and Mama Tino echoed in his mind, fueling his determination. He was no longer just Mr. Nduka, the successful businessman. He was now a man on a mission, determined to uncover the truth and expose the deceit lurking within his own home. The first step in his plan was to hire a private investigator. He needed someone he could trust, someone who was discreet and skilled at gathering evidence without being noticed. Mr. Nduka knew just the man, an old friend from college who had made a name for himself in the world of private investigations. They met discreetly at a local cafe, away from prying eyes. Mr. Nduka, the investigator, Detective Collins, greeted with a knowing smile. What can I do for you? I need your help, Collins. I think my wife and her mother are planning to kill me, Mr. Nduka said bluntly, his voice low and urgent. Collins raised an eyebrow, clearly taken aback. Jesus, man, that's heavy. Are you sure? Collins asked, his tone serious now. I am. I overheard them, Collins. They were plotting my accident. My housemaid confirmed to me that she also overheard them. She doesn't even know I also heard them myself. I need you to find out everything about their plans, every detail. I need proof. Mr. Nduka's voice trembled with a mix of fear and resolve. Collins nodded. All right. I'll get on it. But this is serious, Nduka. Be careful, all right? Mr. Nduka nodded, a cold resolve settling over him. The private investigator had his instructions: surveil Ireti and Mama Tino, gather any evidence of their intentions, and report back to Mr. Nduka regularly. It was risky, but Mr. Nduka had no choice. His entire life was at stake. Meanwhile, Mr. Nduka began setting the stage for his staged death. He started with his own preparations. He arranged a small life insurance policy in his name, naming Ireti and Mama Tino as the beneficiaries. He even went so far as to transfer a large sum of money into an offshore account. It wasn't about the money, he didn't need it. It was about setting up the perfect bait to trap them. The day finally came for the accident. Mr. Nduka's car was parked in a remote location, a deserted stretch of road he'd chosen carefully. It was near the edge of a cliff, hidden from most view. He was to stage a car accident, just enough to make it look real but not deadly. He arranged for a few cuts and bruises, a minor head injury, and then slipped away just before the rescue. Hours later, Ireti and Mama Tino were informed that Mr. Nduka had been found in his wrecked car, unconscious but alive. The police, as per Mr. Nduka's instructions, reported that he was in critical condition and unconscious in the hospital. Ireti rushed to the hospital, her eyes wide with fake concern, her hands trembling as she tried to hold back tears. "You'll be okay, baby," she cooed, her voice barely audible as she clung to his hand. Mama Tino stood by, her face a mask of feigned worry. "I can't believe this is happening. Why him? Why now?" Mama Tino's voice was low, her eyes flickering with greed. Mr. Nduka lay in the hospital bed, hidden beneath layers of blankets, his eyes watching them through half-lidded slits. He saw the fear in their eyes, the tension in their gestures. He could almost hear their thoughts. What if he didn't wake up? What if this was their big break? But Mr. Nduka wasn't going to die. Not yet. The private investigator had already begun sending him regular updates on Ireti and Mama Tino's movements, every suspicious meeting, every guilty glance. Mr. Nduka held his breath, waiting for the moment when the truth would be revealed. Andazi, the housemaid, continued to work tirelessly, cleaning the mansion, cooking meals, and caring for the children. But her heart ached with the knowledge she had overheard everything, she saw the greed in Ireti's eyes, felt the hatred radiating from Mama Tino. She silently prayed that her boss will not die. Days passed, and the tension in Mr. Nduka's hospital room grew unbearable. Ireti and Mama Tino came to visit daily, each visit more desperate than the last. Mr. Nduka lay motionless, his eyes closed, waiting for the right moment. He needed them to believe he was still in a coma, to keep up the charade long enough for Detective Collins to gather all the evidence he needed. Finally, the day came when Collins had enough. He called Mr. Nduka with the news. "I've got it, Nduka. I have everything." "All the proof you need," Collins said, his voice low and grave. Mr. Nduka could feel his heart pounding in his chest. "What have you got?" he asked, his voice barely a whisper. Ireti and her mother were meeting with a local gang, plotting with them to stage an accident to get rid of you. They even went as far as bribing a corrupt official to manipulate the police report, Collins explained. "There's no doubt about it, they were planning your death, Nduka." Mr. Nduka's blood ran cold. The woman he had loved, the family he had built, both had betrayed him, driven by nothing but greed. He felt the weight of his decision to stage his own death now. It had not been just about protecting his wealth but about saving his life. The confrontation had to happen soon. Mr. Nduka could feel his strength returning, just enough to make his plan work. He had to confront Ireti and Mama Tino, reveal the truth and watch their faces crumble when they realized they had been caught. That evening, Ireti and Mama Tino came to the hospital as usual. Ireti's face was pale, her eyes flicking nervously around the room. Mama Tino, on the other hand, looked arrogant, as if she were entitled to the wealth she believed would soon be hers. "Darling, how are you feeling today?" Ireti asked, her voice sweet but her eyes calculating. Mr. Nduka didn't respond. He kept his eyes closed, letting the silence stretch between them. Finally, Collins walked in, a stack of papers in his hands. "Ireti, Mama Tino," Collins said, his voice calm but commanding. "We have all the evidence. We know about your plot to kill Mr. Nduka." Ireti's face drained of color. What are you talking about?" she stammered. "Don't play dumb, Ireti," Collins continued, holding up the incriminating documents. These show payments to a gang and a corrupt official, all in an attempt to stage Mr. Nduka's death. Your game is up. Mama Tino's face twisted in a mask of fury. This is all lies. You've been brainwashed, she snapped. But Mr. Nduka didn't let them deny it. Irate, Mama Tino. I faked my death. I needed to know the truth, he said, his voice steady. And now, I have it. You were both willing to kill me for my wealth. Irate's eyes filled with tears, but they were tears of fear, not remorse. Please, Nduka, believe me, it's not true, she pleaded, her voice trembling. I love you. We were just desperate. We didn't know what else to do. Desperate? Mr. Nduka's voice was icy. You and Mama Tino were willing to murder me for money. There's no excuse for that. Our entire marriage was a lie. Mama Tino stepped forward, her face twisted with hatred. This is all your fault, Irate. If you hadn't ruined everything, we'd still have his money. Enough. Mr. Nduka's voice cracked like a whip. You're both done. Irate, you're leaving my house, today. And Mama Tino, you're not welcomed anymore. I'm cutting you both out of my life for good. I will be filing for divorce. Irate's face crumpled, and she fell to her knees, sobbing. Please, Nduka, don't do this. We can fix this. We can be a family. But Mr. Nduka shook his head, his heart heavy but resolute. No, Irate. You've shown me who you truly are. With that, Irate was escorted out of the hospital by Collins and the police. Mama Tino followed, her face a mask of fury and betrayal. Mr. Nduka watched them go, a mix of relief and sorrow washing over him. The family he had known was gone, replaced by the harsh reality of betrayal. Weeks passed, and Mr. Nduka's wounds were healing gradually both physically and emotionally. Irate and Mama Tino were gone, expelled from his life. The mansion seemed eerily empty without them, but Mr. Nduka felt lighter, freer. He no longer had to look over his shoulder, wondering if his wife or her mother were plotting against him. Andazi, the housemaid, remained by his side through it all. She had seen the worst of it, the fights, the sneaking around, the lies. But she had also seen Mr. Nduka's strength, his determination to protect himself and his wealth. She had come to admire him, even to care for him. And now, seeing him free from the grasp of Irate and Mama Tino, she felt a sense of peace. Mr. Nduka, Andazi said one evening, as she was cleaning, Sir, you've been through so much. I'm glad you're okay now. Mr. Nduka smiled, a small but genuine smile. Thank you, Andazi. You've been a true friend throughout all of this. I don't know what I'd have done without you. Andazi blushed, her eyes downcast. I just did what anyone would do, Mr. Nduka. But not everyone would have, Mr. Nduka replied. You've shown me kindness when I needed it most. The two sat in silence for a moment, the weight of the past lifting just a little. Mr. Nduka had lost so much, his wife, his family, his sense of security. But he had gained something invaluable too, a new perspective, a renewed sense of trust, and a reason to start over. Detective Collins kept in touch, checking in on Mr. Nduka periodically. The investigation into Irate and Mama Tino's schemes was ongoing, but they were well on their way to being brought to justice and divorce concluded. Mr. Nduka, Collins said one day, his voice heavy with gratitude. I never thought I'd say this, but you did the right thing. Irate and Mama Tino had no qualms about betraying you. You didn't just protect yourself, you protected your future. Mr. Nduka nodded, his heart lighter now. I don't feel like a victim anymore, Collins. I feel free. And with that, Mr. Nduka began to rebuild. He sold the mansion, bought a new home, more manageable house, and started over. He even invested in some new businesses, focusing on projects that mattered to him, community-driven, socially responsible. The betrayal of Ireti and Mama Tino had shown him the value of genuine relationships, the importance of trust, and the strength to move forward no matter what life threw at him. Andazi stayed on with him, helping him settle into his new life, and eventually, their relationship blossomed into something more, a bond built on shared hardship and mutual respect. Life wasn't perfect, but Mr. Nduka had found peace. The past was behind him, and he was ready to face the future with a clear mind and an open heart. He had survived a betrayal that would have destroyed most people, but he had come out the other side stronger and wiser. And as he looked out over his new home one evening, Mr. Nduka felt a sense of calm settle over him. The pain and betrayal were still there, but they were a part of his past, not his present. He was ready for whatever the future held. Thank you, besties, for watching. Please say a word in the comment section for Ireti and her mom. Please like, share and subscribe.